Okay, I see it's recording on my end. So, okay,
Yay.
we're recording.
Welcome. Thank you, Dr. Becky,
you.
for joining us for this first inaugural NDBI Essentials guest speaker. We are
Oh, I'm
pumped.
the first. That's exciting.
Yes. And happy birthday. So everyone can wish
Thank
you
you.
happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah. I thought the best way to do this is to kick off each speaker kind of telling us a little bit more about themselves.
Sure. So I'm a little bit of a Jane of all trades within early intervention. So I'll try and condense it and keep it short and sweet. But so I'm both a clinical psychologist and a licensed and board certified behavior analyst. I'm certified at the doctoral level. I've been in the field since 2000. That's literally my entire adult life. I've been working with little ones and not so little ones with autism, and got into the field actually because my mom told me I should, and she was right. So
to listen to your mom.
and she was right. So by coincidence, my mom had a career change, and she was the first administrative employee for, I work for the Wisconsin Early Autism Project, and they were opening up an office in the Milwaukee area, and she saw the ad and replied and started working there. And she's like, Becky, this is what you have to do. You'd be so good at this. You should do it. And after a couple months of her saying that, I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And day one, I was hooked with meeting my first kiddo and seeing like the amazing things that we can accomplish with the science of behavior and how much fun we can have with little ones and making those really important changes. So been in the field ever since, declared a psychology major. Back then we weren't too familiar with the BCBA credential. And so the people who oversaw, behavioral treatment for autism were psychologists. So I got my doctorate in psychology, came right back to WEAP for my postdoc, and then said, oh, there's this thing called a BCBA that you need. So then I went back to graduate school and did my postdoc coursework at FIT. And then I've been board certified since 2013. So a little over 10 years now being board certified. And so I love it. I love every day. I work now I'm more in kind of a clinical leadership role within WEAP. So I do still have a small caseload, and mostly I oversee staff who are getting their master's degree in behavior analysis. So I'm working with a handful of clients, which can't take me away from. That's the best part of the job. Those are the best days.
And fry your fingers off of it. And I love, as long as I've known you, that I didn't know it was because your mom told you to. That's a fun little fact that I just learned today. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, it's
to your mom.
We worked together for a long time. She just retired in 2019. So she was with WEAP for over 20 years as an office manager. And that was her second career that she loved. And I'm glad that worked out, because then I got this amazing career that is so rewarding and that I love so much.
Yes. And I can't say that I know too many professionals who kind of hooked their buggy up with one place and stayed. And you've been there for a long time doing some amazing research work and practice. And that is, I think that's just a testament to how great WEAP is to keep someone of your caliber there and engaged and training kind of the next generation. Like when you talked about the students, so those are student practicum for to pursue certification. Is that what they are?
Yes. So students are getting their master's degree, and then so I'm doing their supervised field work, and then help kind of oversee that with so all the layers of companies these days. So we became part of the Learn Behavioral Network a little over 5 years ago. So that's a national network of providers. So I have colleagues now across the country, which is part of how we got to meet and know each other. And so I'm involved with that kind of across the country of developing our supervision program. So as our field is growing so quickly, to be sure that we can really be providing high quality supervision and training at scale, and that we're not overburdening our supervisors to where then they can't provide that high quality supervision. So putting some parameters and checks and balances in place that we're growing responsibly to really have those high quality services.
So I talk on that, right? At a conference.
Yes, I presented on that at WEBA last year, and we're currently working on a paper to try and publish a paper on our program as well, because we're really excited about it. It's based on, a lot of the research on supervision right now is theoretical and conceptual. And so we've taken all those ideas and put them in practice and want to kind of show that you can put it in practice and what are the challenges associated with that and things that we've learned along the way. to try and help actually start having some data-based papers related to supervision practices. So in addition to NDBIs, that's another passion of mine. And so I like variety. I like lots of different things.
Variety is the spice of life. It keeps it going there.
It sure is.
And then that's a really good point, kind of thinking about how to support students or supervisees who are then going to become staff or clinical program managers, supervisors at the practice. Does that program, side caveat, for supervision incorporate NDBIs or talk about NDBIs, or that's kind of shared or disseminated with them on a different aspect?
It's probably not required because it's going to depend on what someone's interests are and what competencies they need to develop for where they're planning to be their scope of practice. And so the program's really around the structure of supervision, being sure we're getting all those task list items, and then professional development. And so it's a little more broad, it's a little less prescriptive, so that the same program can apply no matter what population you're working with.
Yeah.
We're actually even adapting it for, we've got folks who their role is trainers. So they actually aren't doing direct work with clients. Their job is they're training new hires and they're looking to become BCBAs. So how do they apply that same program to adult learners who are primarily neurotypical? So the structure of the program is pretty broad, but we do have some content. And so of, like a 2-year curriculum of like once a month, here's like the topic of the month. Probably one of those is on NDBIs, but it's really kind of a bit of a pick and choose of what's going to be most relevant for that individual staff member. But definitely in such an important area, because I think with, I love NDBIs and it's so individualized that you really have to understand the concepts to apply them to each individual, which I think does make training more difficult and more complex than like if you're taking a cookie cutter approach. That's an easier thing to train than training conceptual thinking and problem solving and application.
Yes, that's a great point. And I think those are all things that are important when we talk about, I want to learn more about how you got into NDBIs and your interest. And I think those are awesome topics to think about because same thing, rinse and repeat. How do we do that for NDBI dissemination, NDBI training, research, practice? How do we conceptualize what does that look like in practice? And how do we roll it out at an organization like yourself?
Yeah, I don't have the whole answer to that. I've got some ideas.
What got you interested in NDBIs?
It's a big task. And luckily, like with our organization, I want to acknowledge too that there's a number of people that we really like who have been around a long time. So we have a lot of experience. We've got to have at least a dozen clinicians and directors who are 20 years. We're probably pushing that. So lots of people who've been around a long time, have a lot of experience, and the field is growing so much that we've also got lots and lots of newbies and trying to really help be sure that those interventions are developmentally appropriate and individualized and really as effective as they can be. So that's the challenge we're always trying to recalibrate and
how to do it. Yeah. What got you interested in NDBIs?
Really, it was seeing our population as way back when I started in the field. Kids were getting, I know in the Wayback Machine, diagnoses were so much later. Back when I first started doing diagnostics, it was rare to have like a 4-year-old was really young to get diagnosed. When I started, it was a lot of 5, 6, 7-year-olds where pediatricians said, oh, they're a boy, they talk later, let's try birth to 3. And kids were in birth to 3 for 6 to 12 months before there was limited progress and then got referred. And I mean, Wisconsin is great that we have had state funding for behavioral treatment since the late 90s. So we actually did have treatment available or funding available for treatment, but there was a significantly long wait list that was usually about a year long, and its worst got to be 2 years long. So even though we were Wisconsin Early Autism Project, meaning our mission has always been to really do that early intervention piece, with the way the funding structure was, a lot of times, kids got diagnosed at like 5 or 6 and then got into treatment at like 6 to 8. And so we were working with a lot of, younger elementary school age students. And then as awareness improved and kids got referred earlier and the insurance mandate came into place and Medicaid funding, where then the funds were also, there wasn't that wait. All of a sudden we've got 2 and 3-year-olds that we're working with regularly, which is really exciting, but saw, okay, these kids needed like, I can't use the same things I did with this 8 or 10-year-old with this 2 or 3-year-old. That just doesn't developmentally make sense. And so we really had to adjust our practice. Luckily, that didn't happen overnight. It was kind of a process of getting younger and younger kids. And the founders of our company really identified, hey, we need more training for our staff. We need to kind of shift what we're doing as we're working with a much younger population. And so luckily, I kind of had it handed to me on a silver platter by our amazing founders. I have to give them a shout out of Dr. Glenn Sallows and Dr. Tamlin Gropner. Of Sallows and Gropner 2005 was a replication study of ABA, of more traditional ABA approaches. And so our company has always been really founded in research and always seeking to be really cutting edge of what's happening in the field. And along those lines, they were also, as we were getting younger kids, they were really interested in looking at infant siblings and were there ways that we could actually work with children even before they got a diagnosis to try and help set kids on the best trajectory to have the most options in life and to be able to get so many skills in when very early in development, when there's so much plasticity within the brain. And so they saw, okay, like we've got younger kids. We really need to do this. It's important to us. That was valuable to them. So they invested in sending all of our BCBAs for ESDM training and actually bringing in consultants from the ESDM team to work with us and see clients. And so we got some really amazing training. I did not get technically ESDM certified. So I want to be clear on that. Unfortunately, life happened and I was like, almost through the process and then didn't get to the second case study.
Come back.
But it's been a hot minute. That was 2015.
Almost a decade.
I was very close to it, but so I did it. So I didn't finish that training. But since then, that particularly the ESDM model, or broadly NDBIs, but I'm most familiar with ESDM, has really been a huge influence in my practice. For most of the little kids I work with, especially if they've got really limited verbal speech when we're starting, I'm using the ESDM curriculum checklist as kind of my primary assessment and for developing goals and really incorporating those naturalistic, play-based teaching strategies where it might look like we're just playing, but a lot's happening that's very precise and intentional. To really increase those social communication skills. So it's been a really big part of my practice for the last almost 10 years now. And it was just getting the opportunity to work with younger kids and wanting to be sure we're doing so appropriately and effectively to really support them.
Yeah. And I don't know if you want to talk about some of the research work that we've been doing that we'd love to come into a research project one day about what we're doing at Learn in terms of getting the infant toddler autism program kind of practice guidelines kind of developed and finished and rolled out, the training that we have for BCBAs or supervisors and for the technicians to kind of, hey, if you work with this population, this is what we'd like you to do. That might be great to talk about kind of how do we do something like that as a system that's as large as Learn, and what are some pain points? Like, what are the barriers to rolling something like this out, logistics of how to support NDBI implementation training at a multi-state organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're kind of, I'm in the Wisconsin Early Autism Project. So I'm based in Wisconsin, but we're part of this bigger family of providers now across the country, and our colleagues in California with AST or autism spectrum therapies, they were kind of experiencing the same developmental, shift in their clients that we had at WEAP, in the past. And so they were in the situation that the regional centers there were actually referring children pre-diagnosis. So a lot of 2-year-olds and even kids who weren't yet 2, who were, a year and a half, who were getting referred, who could be getting services, even if they didn't have that diagnosis yet. And seeing, the same thing in their staff of, our staff are usually used to working with older clients. We need to adjust our training and shift our practice to be appropriate for these itty bitty kiddos who are coming to our door and needing some support here. And so that's when they reached out, which is a great thing about having this national network, is we've got a lot of people with a lot of experience that we can collaborate with and build on. And if you ask, someone's probably done it. We've got people across the country who've been doing this 20, 30 years. So really then kind of brought together a group of subject matter experts from within the broader organization to then develop some training and resources that we could then use across the country related to NDBIs.
And that's when we met.
Yes, I was going to say, and that's where we got connected. So, and as far as the development of the training, you were a huge part of that and can always speak to that the best. I kind of got involved in when the training was just about ready, when it was in a solid draft to help to review it and give feedback and input, which I really appreciated that. And I think that helped just always, the more that we get collaboration and different perspectives, you just get a better product in the end. And it was already a really solid training. And then with lots of people take a look and see how can we really make this the best possible. Got training that we're all really happy with and really proud of. That was set up for, at this point, really looking at that training being for kind of both BCBAs and technicians. Because we want to be sure that our first, if we're giving something to a technician or the BCBA, their supervisor has to know that and be familiar with that content. But so trying to pitch it at a level that would kind of be appropriate for both of those levels of staff. And it's a multiple sequence asynchronous training that covers typical child development, kind of an overview of NDBIs, looking specifically at how do we help support regulation, and how do we build that engagement with learners, and how do we really support communication. And going through this course sequence to then be able to be exposed to all of those topics.
Yeah, which was about 2.5 hours, right? Somewhere
around there, two and a half. Yeah. So it's a good amount of training, but also not, excessive to the point where it'd be prohibitive. One of the the balances of doing something at a large scale is sure, like 2.5 hours of training sounds like nothing, but then when you're trying to pay thousands of people to do that training, that adds up really quickly. And when you're balancing, okay, we have someone who's new, we want to get them trained and competent. We also want to get them out in the field working with kiddos. And it's that balance of how much training is the right amount of training to be sure they're doing services competently, but also not going overboard where then we're delaying access to treatment because someone's still sitting, doing classwork, when really that on the job piece is going to be so important as well, and getting to know their, unique learner.
Yeah. And I think also having it kind of geared towards technicians where sometimes there's a higher turnover rate. Like that's an investment into staff learning, and we want to train everyone and then boom, they're out of there X amount of time later. That's, that's a big cost as well. So for me, I feel like that's always a pain point of we want to invest in technicians and they're working with this population 0 to 4, 0 to 5, 0 to 3, whatnot. But then we also want to, we've got the 40-hour training. If they're doing RBT, your probably safety training, health, ill-born, what are those safety illnesses? All of them.
Bloodborne pathogens, all that good stuff.
Yes, that you have to do. And
all the OSHA stuff.
and it's like, it's one more thing to do, but it's so important because I really view working with infants and toddlers as a subspecialty. It's different than working with preschoolers and kind of understanding how to support child regulation because they're toddlers. They are not regulated emotionally well-being individuals yet. They're still co-regulating. So I think it's great to have that. And I loved your topic that you kind of addressed with having it for BCBAs to also be knowledgeable, because not all BCBAs have been exposed to NDBIs, depending on where you're at and where you work and your interest or your scope of practice. So I think that's a great point, and kind of why we cultivated it that way. We want everyone to kind of be on the same page. And I know you guys just did a talk at Cal Alba, same kind of topic, kind of like implementation, rollout, all of this good stuff. Do you have any tidbits or highlights from that talk? That was in February, last month?
Yeah, time goes fast. It's been a month already, just almost on the dot. Exactly. So we had shared some data at Cal because so much, investment went into this training. We want to see, well, does it actually work? Do we actually see changes in people's competence and their performance, working with these young learners? And so a project that we put together that I think we're continuing to try and expand on, but it's an initial pilot stage that we're really proud of, is really looking at an implementation study and looking at both social validity of, did people find this useful? Ultimately, did they actually then demonstrate changes in how they interacted with their learners? So we had a few BCBAs and a good number of technicians. I think we had about a dozen technicians who, before taking the training, everybody took a survey of just how confident they felt with implementing NDBIs, of understanding child development and the target areas for those trainings. So helping support communication, helping support regulation and engagement. So how confident people felt before, and then we did the training, and then how confident did they feel after the training. And kind of across the board, we saw people feeling much more confident after the training, both BCBAs and technicians. And after the training, pretty much everybody was confident to extremely confident kind of across the board, where before the training, it really ranged from not confident at all to some people feeling already pretty confident, who might have had a little bit more experience to start with. So we got really great social validity wise. A cool tidbit that wasn't planned, but just happened anecdotally was just spontaneously technicians who took the training just would reach out and compliment us on it. Got a couple emails and a couple people who I was observing and working with who we did the training, who just had amazing things to say of they loved it so much. People who already had a bachelor's degree in psychology or had even been in the field for a year or two as a technician, really saying, wow, I learned so much from this that I'm excited to implement with my really great qualitative feedback as well. And then the last part that I'm kind of most excited about, because it's great if people like it and feel better, but are they actually performing better? Because we know that confidence and competence don't always co-vary, especially in novices. It's less correlated. So we actually did then fidelity checks for the technicians. So we had someone who was experienced in NDBIs, like yourself or myself, members of the research team, observe technicians before the training and rate them using the NDBI fidelity check. And then they did the training and then viewing them again about a week or two after the training and coding them across different domains. And we saw across the board really great progress on that as well, which was great to see, like, okay, it's actually doing what we want, that people are doing this 2.5-hour training and we're seeing average scores going up. And in particular, areas of building those communication opportunities, we really saw increase. But the one I like to call, like, bring in the circus stick town, the positive affect item of really being fun and animated, which is so important for most, not all, but most of those young learners. And obviously being appropriate to the situation. Like if someone falls and gets hurt, I'm not going to be all exaggerated and excited. And some kids, that's just not for them. And so you need to be aware of that and match that. But a lot of our learners, that really supports that communication and engagement, and just helps make, a lot of social stimuli reinforcing and make those social stimuli meaningful, of not just reinforcers, but then also SDs and motivating operations, and really making it so much more valuable to them. And then that's just a pivotal skill, because that opens up so many more things once social cues are relevant stimuli for our kiddos. So it was great to see. That's where we saw the most improvement, was on that positive affect item on the checklist. So we're seeing it work. It's looking good. Now it's a small sample size. And so that's something that we're hoping to expand on and ultimately then publish as well. Because, we often don't know how many times do we attend a training online. And we know that just having lecture isn't the most effective training. So something really important that we incorporated into the training was having video examples, and then actually during those videos having tags of both the child's behavior and the teacher's behavior of what's happening and why, to be able to help make those observations more meaningful. So someone's not just sitting back and watching, they're actually seeing, well, what learning is happening, what intentional things are being done by the teacher in that situation to create a learning opportunity.
And I think that's one of the big myths and kind of misconceptions about NDBIs. It's just in the net. It's co-construction, it's dyadic engagement, social reciprocity, like all of this beautiful teaching that's happening within these jars if you're in the ESDM or framework, whatever you use. And if you don't break it down and kind of think about composite skills, people don't always understand what it is that's happening. And if you're very well skilled at it, it just looks like play or
looks seamless
routine. And that is, I think, a sign of a really good NDBI teacher, is if it looks so natural. But if you can sit back and think about what's happening to link this adult behavior to the child behavior to meaningfully impact a learning objective or a treatment goal or an outcome, then you start to really conceptualize what's happening, and it's complex and it's not easy. So I feel like for some people, to leave the table with the binder and the materials and to go into the natural environment is really a scary place for them. And that's my favorite place to be, is this language-based learning environment where our kids live and thrive, and not at the isolated, nothing around them type of setting where you wouldn't typically see a 1, 2, 3-year-old toddler hanging out. So I find that kind of as a pain point for some people coming from more traditional ABA programs, to kind of make that paradigm shift and to move the needle over to not thinking about NDBIs as just play or play-based. It's a routine-based or a relationship-based type of interaction. But what do we do with young children? They learn through play. So it kind of looks like that because that's how they should be learning. So I always find that an interesting discussion point.
It is, and I think, like you said, the more skilled someone is at it, the more play it look, and like the less it looks like treatment or teaching, which I think makes it even more important to explain to stakeholders and third parties of parents. I'm doing that a lot with parents when I'm having an initial evaluation with a child. I open it up with, it's going to look like I'm just playing with them. Here's the things I'm actually going to be doing. And then as I'm engaging in those things, I'm always pointing out, okay, right now I'm looking for this behavior. Oh, that's great. I just saw your child do this. To really explain what I'm doing. And we're not just hanging out and having, like, we are having fun, but we're not just having fun. A lot of learning and a lot of assessing is going on, and to try and really make that explicit, because if you're not trained in it to see it, you might miss it. And it is so important. I think that's what makes the training really complex for training technicians and people new to the field, because it looks like just playing and hanging out, but there's so much more to it.
Or to convey to the funders and the stakeholders, it should look like play because that is appropriate developmentally for these children. So we're talking about children that might be chronologically 2, 3, but developmentally maybe not. So if it looks like play, it probably should, because that is the learning of that age of a child. So getting people to kind of understand different contexts for how children learn what's quote unquote developmentally appropriate, and then individualizing the intervention and mapping it onto that to meet the child where they are. And I think NDBIs do that so brilliantly, just so well. And
they
then
do,
do that to people, like it should look like that because that's appropriate for this age range.
What is it? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, if their only exposure has been to the more traditional tabletop kind of ABA, nothing wrong with that. It's appropriate for some children young as well, or more structured in need. But when we're looking at kind of the little ones that we're seeing come in, that we've come into the program, that's not weird. They are learning their best learning, right? Not the appropriate setting, or not the best, most meaningful, relevant learning opportunities for them.
And just to circle back to something that you said earlier, of like that hesitation of kind of moving away from the table and the binder and the flashcards. And like that was a conversation that we had, back in 2015, 2016, when we were all getting this training of like, wow, this stuff is great. And like, I, as someone really experienced and educated, see how to do this, and I can do it. One of our early conversations was like, and how do we train paraprofessionals to do this? Because it is, and it's never easy, but it is so much easier to like, okay, we're going to put out these 3 flashcards. You're going to ask this question in this specific way. If the child does this behavior, then you're doing this. It's so prescribed that it makes it a lot easier to train and to train and get fidelity. And there's times where that is appropriate for certain learners and certain skills. But I think it does make it so much more complex, and that can be a barrier to implementation, and just really poses a challenge and opportunity to us as a field of how do we really implement that training so that it is really high quality teaching that's happening and not just hanging out. So that's something we're always trying to look at, and with where right now with culture and where things are with employment, people have lots of job opportunities. It's employees' choice right now to where they want to work, and I think that makes it harder on employers to find really good quality candidates. And people who are going to put in the work and the effort. Like if it's a good ESDM session, like TMI, I'm soaked in sweat afterwards. It's hard work, and it's fun, and it's a blast, but it's not passively sitting back and like driving an Uber or doing DoorDash. And so trying to train kids these days, young people these days, of just it's a lot of hard work, and it's finding the right person, and how do we create establishing operations for those new hires and technicians to really see the effectiveness of that and the reinforcement available by engaging in these strategies and by putting in the effort and deliberately teaching how much progress our learners can make. And I think that's a unique challenge that we're facing right now, and trying to work through with training programs like this to really ensure that it's good quality treatment.
I agree.
That we're providing.
Do you have any final thoughts on practitioners that are interested in NDBIs, how to support them, information where they can learn more, just people coming into your agency, kind of how you cultivate that culture. I almost view it as a culture of kind of bringing this in and teaching children in a different way because of that's how they need to be taught, or what's, again, quote unquote, developmentally appropriate for them. Any advice for anybody who's new to this, really wanting to learn more about it?
I think a community is so important because we know behavior change is hard. Like learning something new is hard, and we all have the best intentions. Like, oh yeah, I want to do this new thing, and get excited, go to a conference or hear a training, and then it's a lot of work to maintain and sustain behavior change. And so for self accountability, but even more for support and for reinforcement, I think having a community of practice is really critical. And so, luckily, within our organization, we've always really had a lot of enthusiasm for new techniques and approaches and supporting each other and sharing resources together. So I'm in a lucky, great situation where we've got a lot of colleagues who support that and who just know, like people know, hey, I'm really interested in NDBIs. We've done these trainings and presentations. And so because people know that like I'm interested in NDBI and excited about it, literally a couple days ago, I got an email from our director of research that says, hey, here's this new article on cultural responsiveness and NDBI. Are you familiar with it? And I was not. So part of this, like if people just know, then if they're aware of something, they might share it with you. And same thing, you can pay it forward and share it with others, because there's just so much information out there. It's not possible to read every article in every journal that might be related to your practice, as much as we can to try and skim those tables of contents and stay up to speed. But there is just more information than any one person can consume if you're actively in practice to be able to do.
I agree.
So I think those communities are important.
And I'll link it for the members so they can go in and check it out. And then I want to find the links for the WEBA and the Calaba talk. Again, people can kind of read about that online. I think that'd be great. And if there's anything else that you can think of that'd be helpful to share, send it to me, and then I'll put some links up there so we can kind of, my whole vision with this is to connect these amazing mentors that come in and connect individuals in the membership, the community that we're cultivating here, to be able to learn more about what you guys are doing and employment opportunities and research opportunities, and just really connecting everyone, because there's a lot of good stuff out there. It's just not easy to find sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I want to get the title right. So I'll send you the link. And so the title of the article is Cultural Considerations in Caregiver Implemented Naturalistic Developmental Behavioral Interventions, a Scoping Review. So I will send, just published literally March 1st. So that is hot off the presses.
I have not seen that one. So that might be our monthly article review that I post for everyone.
Perfect. And then this is how it works as we share with each other. So otherwise, my primary resource is you. I follow you on LinkedIn and often get a lot of stuff that way. I really, there's a lot of good stuff. And I really do like LinkedIn for that, on the professional side of sharing resources, and then the algorithms know, okay, here's the stuff you might be interested in because your friends are interested in it. So I think that really helps to kind of be, especially like those brand new articles as they come out, the helpful way to get to know that stuff too.
I love it. I am so grateful for you to join us today and to chat about that. And I can't wait for the members to watch this and to see their comments and ideas and discussion come in, which hopefully will lead us on a whole new way of supporting the members and how they can try and implement something in their organization, or think about potential research projects that they might want to implement as well, because I think it's so easy to do in research settings, but you guys are doing it in the applied arena, and it's beautiful and it looks good and the data is moving where we want it to go. But most importantly, the social validity, people are enjoying it, feeling more comfortable and confident working with this population. And I think, kudos to that. That's amazing.
So thank you. This was so much fun. This was great. I can't wait to hear what they have to say, and hope they enjoy it and find it useful. It was a lot of fun.
I think they will. Absolutely. Okay. I think I got it. Stop.
Got it. All right.